Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
I was talking to these young men over here earlier. You are all students, right? And you tried to get on the train.
Yeah.
And what happened when you tried to get on the train? What were you told?
We were told that they are not allowing the blacks to get on board. So if you're a black and then you go there, you're wasting your time. So we didn't even bother ourselves. We just went to pick a bus and then headed to this place.
Yeah, because usually there were black people that were already there that were turning around, looking for the borders and other routes because they stood there for a long time and they were not getting on the train because they were stopping them. So they were warning us not to even try to go there because they would not allow us. That is why we didn't go for the train and try to find another route. Basically.
And how does that make you feel to hear things like that?
I don't know, man. It's just, it feels unfair actually. It feels unfair and for us, it just feels like we don't have a choice. We just want to get out, so we kind of try to find another way possible. We don't usually waste more time because the more time we wait, we don't know what's going to happen. Things keep getting worse every day. And we get a lot of complaints. For example, don't go to this border because you might not go. They might not let you in. Don't go here. So you get confused. You don't even know where to go to get across the border. So we just chose this place just to try because we have to try something. If you keep listening, don't go to this border. Don't take this train. So we might not just move at all. So it's very frustrating actually.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
The white media is attempting to bury the story about how Ukraine is systematically oppressing the Africans in the middle of a war. When the Africans try to get on trains leaving the country, you got the authorities, the government, shoving them off of the trains. You have Ukrainian border guards who turn the Africans away, with or without guns. This is all documented. They can't deny that they're doing it, and yet the white media, since they can't deny it, they're just deciding to ignore it. After all, they have a nice, neatly packaged narrative, and a lot of people seem to be buying into it, and for people to see that the Ukrainians' own government is engaging in blatant, egregious acts of anti-black racism in the middle of a war, no less, well, that might start causing people to say that maybe the Ukrainian government isn't what the white media has been claiming it is, because all of this mistreatment of the Africans that's been going on the last week has been carried out by the Ukrainian government. Vladimir Putin's justification for his special operation in Ukraine is because he says that government is full of Nazis. Now, I don't know if there's any card-carrying wannabe members of the Third Reich running around in Kyiv or not, but I do know that Ukraine itself has a deep-seated and long-standing tradition of anti-black racism. Here's just a few of their greatest hits. In 2015, you had an incident where Ukrainians' racism at soccer games was so blatant, so egregious, with black attendees being attacked, that you had one soccer executive in Ukraine who said, "Look, we should segregate the black fans from everyone else, to avoid racism." He didn't decide we need to punish the people who are doing this mess. He decided, well, we need to make sure the black people are separated. You probably didn't hear much about that, did you? And this article is dated October 2015. That's months after Dylan Roof massacred a bunch of black grandmothers and their preacher in church. Now, I'm sure that the white media and their apologists and some soft-headed Negroes will try to say, well, that was 2015. Volodymyr Zelensky, he wasn't even president then. And besides, I'm sure that Ukraine was fully on board after the uprisings of 2020. Why, the murder of George Floyd, I'm sure it made it where Ukraine was nothing but sympathetic, right? Well, what was going on in 2020 in Ukraine, when Volodymyr Zelensky had already been president of that country for several months? Well, only a few months after George Floyd was murdered, with the anti-black racism uprisings in full swing and spreading to other countries, the whole world at least expressing sympathy if not solidarity with why we were fighting, over in Ukraine, they were holding up banners at their soccer games saying, "Free Derek Chauvin." This is not photoshopped, by the way. This actually happened. And this was at a soccer game where there were no American teams playing. I'm not even sure if there were any Americans present. And yet you had people over there in Ukraine who wanted to show their solidarity with the sadistic, torturous murder of a black man. That's what they wanted to do. That's what's going on in Ukraine. And this happened on Volodymyr Zelensky's watch. Now, it may not have happened because of him, but it happened when he was in charge. And where was Volodymyr Zelensky at? The brave, the noble, the symbol of Ukrainian courage and democratic freedom. This man who's become a symbol. Where was he at in 2020? To stand up to white supremacy in his own home, in his country, in his face. He's Jewish, by the way. Volodymyr Zelensky is the first Jewish head of state of Ukraine. And yet, when it came time to talk about Black Lives Matter, he was MIA. I haven't found anything where Volodymyr Zelensky has said the word Black Lives Matter or even referenced it or even thought about it or was even asked about it. This man has said absolutely nothing on that issue. Black people dying, being murdered. The whole world is seeing it. Many other countries are in an uproar about it. Uprisings in the streets caused by what happened to George Floyd and the black killings that have been happening here for the longest time. And yet the man who the white media wants you to see as being a saint, to see him as being the embodiment of courage, apparently didn't have enough nerve to say that, hey, maybe all of this cheering for black people being murdered, maybe that's wrong. You got people holding up a banner supporting a man who you see on video commit a sadistic murder, and Volodymyr Zelensky apparently didn't have enough guts to be able to confront them. There weren't any Russian bombs dropping on him then. There wasn't the Red Army banging at his door. Just a bunch of white supremacists who were showing outrageous, egregious acts of anti-black racism, and Volodymyr Zelensky apparently didn't have anything to say. He wouldn't even dare to show solidarity with black people on that. Now, I've spent the better part of a day looking to see if there was anything at all that could be found regarding Volodymyr Zelensky and Black Lives Matter, any sort of advocacy for it, anything where he shows, you know what, we may not have many black people over here, but the ones that we got, we're at least going to do right by them. We're not going to allow anyone to bully them or to harm them or to push them around. Certainly not to have somebody saying that they should be killed. No, Volodymyr Zelensky apparently didn't have much to say. In fact, he had nothing.
Me, I'm sorry. It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters and his rockets.
I told you about this guy yesterday, David Sekvarelidze. He's Ukraine's deputy chief prosecutor. This is the guy who Volodymyr Zelensky has as one of the highest ranking members of his government. Team reflects leadership, family. Am I supposed to pretend to be so dense that I actually believe that Zelensky chose this guy to be his deputy chief prosecutor? He lets this guy hang around talking like this? You think he's the only one? So you have the actions of Ukraine's security forces, and you even have a senior ranking member of Ukraine's government, and here they are talking exactly like, well, very much the way that Vladimir Putin described them. This is how they're behaving. This is how they're talking. His opportunity to make a plea to the world, and what does he do with it? He uses this opportunity to speak to the global audience to say what hurts him is seeing Europeans being hurt, and then he goes into detail, just in case saying European was too vague, he goes into detail and says blonde hair, blue-eyed. Now, you see all of the non-blonde haired, blue-eyed people running around in Ukraine, but the deputy chief prosecutor doesn't care about them. You know, yesterday CNN conducted an interview with President Zelensky, but I think we can all guess that the deputy chief prosecutor's comments never came up. So I guess that if Putin was dropping bombs on black Ukrainians, or at least black people who are in Ukraine right now, Mr. Sekvarelidze, he wouldn't feel quite so bad about it. He only is concerned if they're blonde-haired and blue-eyed, given his statement, because he expressed absolutely no concern for anyone or anything else. This wasn't from a soccer game 7 years ago, or from a soccer match 2 years ago. This is something that happened just in the last week alone. This is Volodymyr Zelensky's own government saying this. This is not some rowdy, drunk fans or some bigots who think that they got a pass because they're in a country that allows them to engage in anti-black racism. This is Volodymyr Zelensky's own people saying this, the people in his government. Now, there are plenty plenty of other examples of anti-black racism in Ukraine, but you get the point. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what was happening in Ukraine before Zelensky became president and how things are going all the way up to the present. It's a very different picture than the one the white media has been showing you now, isn't it? This is how deep-seated the anti-black racism is in Ukraine right now, from not just the government, but also from a number of citizens as well. But since it's the Ukrainian government who Vladimir Putin is claiming is the pretext for his invasion, that's the reason why the treatment of those Africans is so important. It's being carried out by the government. Now, of course, when Putin says that the Ukrainians are neo-Nazis, he's simply talking in terms of history and in terms of politics. He's talking about the typical tensions between white ethnic groups, Anglos hating on Irish, Germans hating on French, Spanish hating on Portuguese, etc. Putin has no love for black people. You can look at how black people have been treated in Russia, the things that he said regarding black world leaders. It goes completely without saying that Vladimir Putin is no friend of black people, full stop. But we already know that. And the white media is not attempting to shut down any discussion about Vladimir Putin's racism. They're letting that go on. Okay, fine. But my question is, if the white media is going to scream at us that Putin is lying when he says the Ukrainian government is racist, then at the very least, shouldn't that denial be true? If you're going to say that Putin is lying, then shouldn't your statement be accurate that he's lying? I should be able to look at the Ukrainian government's behavior and see, yeah, Vladimir Putin's lying. But when we're looking at it, we're saying, no, can't say that they're neo-Nazis, but I can say there's a lot of racism going on. They don't want us bringing up the mistreatment of Africans in Ukraine at all. It's an inconvenient truth, and they're being strident and belligerent about shutting down anyone who tries. On The View a couple of days ago, you had Sunny Hostin, who actually had the guts to bring up how black people are being treated in Ukraine by the Ukrainians, and one of the panelists, Anna Navarro, I told you about her when she's on CNN, pure garbage. She goes full white supremacist.
One of the reports, though, that's coming out of the Ukraine that I found particularly upsetting is that there are a lot of African students, Nigerian medical students, that are being denied, passage out of the country. And the Nigerian president has been tweeting, has been making a lot of students. I mean,
who's responsible for that?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the Ukrainian border guards are sort of letting men and children and women and children, and then men, and then the Nigerian students.
Oh, I had seen the same reports, which I thought were troublesome too. Look,
it's tragic.
I've been a refugee of war. I've had to flee my country to the neighboring country. It was Honduras when we fled Nicaragua. War is chaos. And yesterday it gave me some comfort to see Jose Andres, who tweeted out he was there with a Nigerian woman, and he said he had spoken to people from India and Congo and African countries and Jamaica, and that was not happening. So I don't know what's true.
Well, I spoke to a friend of mine who is on the Polish border who's working with attorneys, and she assures me that it is happening, and there's plenty of video that it is happening. And I think it's because the Ukraine invites and encourages a lot of Nigerian students and Indian students to come there for affordable medical school. And so you're talking about people that are training to be doctors, people that are training to be engineers.
My point is that war is chaos, and right now, to me,
all who flee a conflict situation, Anna, have the same right to safe passage.
Absolutely, and Jose Andres is saying that is happening. Jose Andres is on the ground. He's not, he's not in a studio. He's on the ground. He's meeting with people. He's interviewing them. He's saying that's happening.
You're both right, but there are boneheads on both sides. There are boneheads on there are boneheads everywhere. So yeah, both things are happening. Both things are happening. People are able to get out, and a lot of people are not.
First, she dismisses the seriousness of these racist incidents. She minimizes them and says that they're merely troublesome. You heard it yourself. That's how she describes what's being done over there. It's troublesome. No, troublesome is when you have a waiter who brings you a salad fork instead of a steak fork. That's troublesome. And then she does the old white privilege two-step. She starts by saying why she has a friend who told her that that's not happening. A friend who's not there to actually back any of this up, but just take her word for it. Now, both of those statements that she said can't be true. They can't both be true. She cannot in one breath say that an incident is troublesome and then in the very next breath say it didn't happen at all. But as Neely Fuller said, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the argument. Naturally, Ana Navarro doesn't present any evidence, but take her word for it, or rather take her friend's word for it, a friend who isn't even there. Take their word for it, it's not happening. Sonny points out, there's video of this, lots of video. You can't deny that this is happening, but that's what Ana Navarro does. She says, it's not happening, it's not happening. She's literally saying, who are you going to believe, my imaginary friend or your lying eyes? Now, it would have been one thing if this piece of trash had said, well, it's not happening anymore, but that's not what she said. She said it wasn't happening at all. She gave a total denial of one of the most well-documented widespread incidents of racial discrimination in Europe. Now, Ana Navarro, in addition to being an immigrant, she's also one of these white Latinos. Occasionally, she will claim that I'm a woman of color, but she only does that when it suits her, especially if she's having to deal with racism from the right wing. But the other 99% of the time, she ain't talking like that at all. This is your black-brown alliance. A lot of people say, well, she is a Republican strategist. Give me a break. She had a problem with Trump for a few years, and that's the reason why she did her little thing. It raised her profile on white cable television, and she was fine with that. It was a win-win as far as she was concerned. I've told you and will keep telling you about how these white right-wingers and white left-wingers, these people change teams like you and I change socks. Whatever is expedient to their particular interest or desires for power, the ladder they're trying to climb, the book that they're trying to sell, the TV show that they're hoping to finesse for themselves, they'll go ahead and say whatever line they think is going to be the most expedient to their interest at that moment. Ana Navarro was the biggest Republican until Trump came along and said, build the wall. Then all of a sudden she remembered that she's Hispanic. And now that Trump's out of office, okay, I'm back on team white supremacy full time again now. But this is that black-brown alliance we keep hearing so much about. She's here doing the most to tell people, oh, black people are being discriminated against in the middle of a war in Ukraine. Well, that's not happening. That's not happening. Man, she just rushed to do that mess. Hell, who needs Marjorie Taylor Greene? You got Ana Navarro. Now, I wonder if she's going to be suspended for a couple of weeks. She going to be made to do the apology tour? Of course not. What she's doing is she is speaking what the establishment viewpoint is, which is, first of all, racism. That's really not so bad. And on top of that, we're conducting an operation to maintain white solidarity. You need to shut that Sonny Hostin woman up. What the hell's wrong with you, Sonny? So they're fine with her just lying through her teeth. It's not happening. I have a friend who said it's not happening. Nobody said that absolutely no black people whatsoever are able to get out of there. What they're saying is the Ukrainians themselves are discriminating against the Africans, saying that white people are going to be able to get out of there first, and the black folks maybe will get out, but you're definitely not getting out before the white people do. For that piece of trash Navarro to sit there and form her crooked mouth to say, it's not happening. How vile, how evil for her to do that mess. But this woman sees herself as white. Or at the very least, as far as she's concerned, she's not classified as black, and she wants to make sure the powers that be know that she's on team white supremacy. And of course, you had Mammy Whoopi Goldberg. She was showing her white paymasters that she has been suitably chastened after her unexpected 2-week vacation. She does the usual pox on both your houses shtick, saying, well, there's boneheads on both sides. This is trying to split the baby. And Whoopi understands that she better not call herself going against orders on this one. What happened over there in Ukraine this week, this is not boneheaded behavior. This is deliberate, intentional, and life-threatening racism that the Ukrainians are carrying out. People have to walk for hours in the middle of winter, and Eastern European winters are no joke. Bone-chilling temperatures to get to the border, and when they get there, they have guns pointed at them. They're trying to get on trains, and they're not being told that you don't have the right documentation. Instead, this is a Ukrainians-only train. Yeah, that sounds pretty neo-Nazi-ish to me. The Ukrainians told the Nigerians, why, we're not turning people away at the border. And then they said, we're going to put out a notice saying not to turn anyone away. If you're not turning anyone away at the border, then why do you need to tell your people not to turn anyone away? Somebody's lying here. You see all of this forked-tongue doublespeak going on. Is Putin's invasion of Ukraine justified? Well, to use Anna Navarro's wording, it's troublesome. They're the ones who made a lane for Vladimir Putin to say that there's Nazis in Ukraine. Of course, anything of a racial nature that gets reported about Ukraine could prop up Putin's rhetorical justification for this action. And since this is fracturing white unity, you got the white media who's looking and going, we may not want to be putting out any of this stuff. We're just not going to say anything about it. See, black people get murdered. The first thing the white media does is, let's look under the fingernails and see if there's any dirt. See if there's anything in their past. Okay, in the case of Freddie Gray, you had nothing on him. Let's look at his mother. Is there something about his mother we can get? How many degrees of separation do we have here? That's the game that the white media plays with black people. Meanwhile, you have an entire nation with a very well-documented history of anti-black racism. Well, we're not bringing that up. Besides, Vladimir Putin didn't say that he was going in because of the treatment of black people. Okay, fine. But does that make what the Ukrainians are doing against the Africans any less wrong? I am no defender of Putin, okay? Those of you who have followed me, you know that I've skinned him rhetorically many times. And I'm also not saying that what's happening in Ukraine is a good thing. But there's a reality there. Ukraine has committed numerous acts of racism in the past, and they are doing so right now. We got proof of it. Are we obligated to remain silent about it because we don't want to justify Putin's invasion? As Whoopi Goldberg so eagerly told us, both of those things can be true at the same time. Putin can be dead wrong and even a war criminal for his invasion of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian government, if not the citizenry, can be a bunch of mouth-frothing racists. That's not to say that Ukraine deserves to have Putin attack them, but guess what? All those black people who the Ukrainian government and citizens have been attacking for so long, they don't deserve it either. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Miss Debbie, Carlos, Ikegas Dorset, Frank Den, and Eddie Newsom. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.